Former Chief of Global Development for Barack Obama, Mohamed El-Erian, warns that inflation is here to stay. Let's listen to what he had to say.
So they will go higher, and the Fed has misread the inflation dynamics in a big way and is still hostage to this notion it's transitory. But the first thing it should do is stop injecting $120 billion every month. It should stop that. Do we really need the Fed to buy 40 billion of mortgages and push house prices even higher? No.
Senate Republicans' Communications Center trolled the Biden administration on inflation using the popular internet meme to call out the White House's boasting on low prices during the 4th of July holiday compared to now when costs for Thanksgiving meals are expected to be higher than ever. We have new Hill-HarrisX data on Biden's approval when it comes to inflation. Let's take a look at that. The poll found 31% of voters approve of Biden's handling of inflation, while 48% disapprove, and 21% said neither. Roughly 6 in 10 Democrats approve of Biden on the issue, while 80% of Republicans and 56% of independents disapprove. Ryan, that number of independents is quite interesting. What's your take on this?
Well, and also the quantitative easing comments from Mohamed El-Erian are interesting because a lot of people miss this, but Joe Manchin, in his deal that he proposed to Chuck Schumer about a reconciliation deal, said one of his conditions that he wanted was that the Fed would end quantitative easing, which was a really unusual thing to see from a senator, like trying to direct Fed policy. Mitch McConnell was asked about that later, said, what do you think about this idea of ending quantitative easing? He was extremely uncomfortable and dodged the question. Because there are plenty of business leaders that love the fact that the Fed is pumping money,
of course,
into their coffers and buying up their assets. But that is, we have different kinds of price manipulations going on at the same time and price inflation going on at the same time. The problem with the supply chains and shipping is not one that would be solved by austerity, by stripping money out of the economy. Unless you said, well, okay, people are too broke to buy anything at all, then prices are, prices are going to fall and everything is going to just sit there at the ports. But we had Stephanie Kelton on a while ago pointing out that, unfortunately, the long-term solution, unfortunately for policymakers that don't want to spend money, you have to actually invest in infrastructures that can move goods more efficiently.
Well, then that raises the question if also spending to the tune of multiple trillions of dollars in the space of a single year, like austerity not being the solution is one thing, but is that rapid level of accelerated spending the solution either? Right,
and we knew, and everybody, and that's why the Fed keeps saying it's transitory, everybody knew that once the pandemic was over and everybody rushed out to the bar, that chicken wings were going to be more expensive because chicken wing production had declined and shut down as a lot of workers got COVID, as a lot of plants and factory farms came offline. I'm just using that as one example.
Yeah.
And so it's not like you can flip a switch and all of a sudden production is right back on. And what we realized is that not only can you not flip a switch and bring production immediately back online, the whole thing kind of seized up, and it's now much harder to get things. So you already knew that when everybody flooded back into the economy, that there was going to be a temporary spike. we're now seeing that temporary spike is going to be, the temporary period is going to be much longer because the system is still seized up. But New York Times' Jim Tankersley reports the inflation surge could complicate the Biden White House's agenda. For months, Biden's team has insisted that rising prices were temporary, but instead, quote, the president and his aides are now bracing for high inflation to persist into next year, with Americans continuing to see faster and sustained increases in prices for food, gasoline, and other consumer goods than at any point in this early century. And energy costs are, the kind of least predictable of all of these. But this winter, we're expected to see a significant energy crunch, and we might only see energy prices continue to rise.
Yeah, and he's going to get blamed for it, and that's
how it works. Whoever's the boss gets the blame.
Right, yeah. And that number that we pulled out earlier, the 56% of independents as of right now, I mean, that could get worse, and that could be very bad for Democrats, because if this is your administration, it's just going to be almost impossible to avoid blame from voters in a very bad economy.
Right, and the risk for progressives is that voters tie it to spending,
yeah, and
say, well, therefore we just need to impoverish people, and that'll be good for inflation. And then you have another 40 years in the wilderness before you can try to work on improving the social contract again.
Is there a way to target the spending, and do you think that's what's actually in process as these negotiations are ongoing, to mitigate the circumstances in a way that would help Democrats?
Well, not in the very short term,
right?
Because I mean, you can make sure that people have enough money in their pockets so that they're not seeing a decline in their standard of living.
You can afford an expensive Thanksgiving.
If the turkey costs an extra $10, you make sure people have an extra $10, right? But long term, and our system is not designed to do anything long term. But long term, the ports need to be better. More manufacturing needs to be done here in the United States, and we need to kind of get things moving smoothly again, and that takes investment. But nobody wants to do the investment because, well, investment is causing inflation.
And nobody wants to own a long-term solution
right.
that's tough in the short term.
Right. And I don't think investment is causing inflation, but that's what people would say, yeah.
So, yeah, and I think that's a reasonable sort of debate. And, politicians are going to politician no matter what.
They were planning on running on this the whole time, and now they're going to get to.
Yeah. Well, on that sad note, we'll have more Rising for you after this.